Hey, what's up, everybody? So this is a special episode of the Token Takeover Podcast because you can actually see my face for the first time. Hopefully, I have not let you down. Today we are joined by Sascha. Sascha is from the startup Polemos. Did I pronounce that right? I always feel like I mess it up.
Polemos, both are fine. Like everyone takes it with their own spin.
Okay, cool. And we're going to talk about today leveling up the Web3 player and DAO experience. So, Sascha, why don't we start? And can you just kind of tell us a little bit about you, who you are, what you've been doing?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. First of all, thank you for having me. Been a while since we chatted on one of these, obviously in a different format. So happy to come back. So personally, I have a background in tech and gaming. So initially started out as a programmer, took a detour and got a master's degree in history. Basically was gaming the entire university time. So 20, 22 hours a day, MMO grinding and stuff like that.
Nice.
So played some competitive Counter-Strike as a teenager and then slowly migrated into other genres later on. I've worked in the, let's say, traditional gaming industry for several years as well. Initially focused on customer support, community management, then eventually progressing into product management and just kind of like management as a whole, being responsible for multiple game teams. And then about 2 years ago, I kind of like came across Web3 as a concept, like NFTs, what that could mean for the gaming space. And personally, I got hooked immediately. Took me 2-3 days to kind of like really dive deep into it. And just the idea of having real ownership of assets was kind of like what really hooked me. So from there, I very, very quickly kind of like tried to find my way into this industry. I was in a regular IT manager position at that time. So I very quickly took most of my savings, invested in one of the projects in the space, which at that time was Illuvium, quit my job as fast as I could and went full time into blockchain gaming, Web3 gaming, GameFi, whatever you want to call that these
All
days.
the above.
The terms are shifting quite fast. Personally, I'm sticking to blockchain gaming right now, but I know everyone has their own favorite.
Nice. Yeah, man. So for those who didn't know, so prior to starting this podcast and starting the startup and everything else, I had a YouTube channel. And Sascha was the first interview I ever did on that channel. And I was
It was still
so
a good one.
nervous, man. So nervous. But the crazy thing is, even back then, you were talking about things that blew my mind. And it's really awesome to see how you guys have delivered on a lot of that stuff that we'll get into in the pod. But okay, so you found blockchain, got excited about the ability to own your assets and where it was going for gaming. So I always find this interesting. So during your time at Illuvium, it was almost like a hotbed of creativity, experimentation, and isn't that kind of where like your core group spun out of, was just kind of chatting in the Discord?
It kind of is. So I was when I found Illuvium, I was pretty much hooked from the first day. So there was a huge promise, of course, very great, kind of like initial leaks. The visuals were amazing even back then.
Yeah.
And so I became quite active, became a mod, then a lead mod quite quickly on their Discord. Got voted into the council in 2 epochs in a row. And that's kind of like through all this activity there, I came across basically investors in this space already. So some large scale, very successful investors that have been in this space for several years, usually more in the kind of like in the seat of a VC in some kind of fashion. And they wanted to do something in this space, kind of like this whole wave of activity and hype that came around with Axie blowing up and YGG making a lot of fundraising and success through summer 21, I think it was. And then people anticipating things like Merit Circle at the end of the year. That's kind of like when we were talking. And they had already kind of like thought about doing something. So it was about kind of like players in this space, bringing players in. So we got talking together through kind of like all these Illuvium contacts, and really hit it off. And so the five of them kind of like pulled me in as the sixth co-founder, and we took off from there. So we saw it immediately that just doing guilds like they were kind of like ideated at that time is not what we wanted to do, because this whole idea about a play to earn guild doesn't felt for us was very future proof, let's say. So we
Yeah.
anticipated something happening to this cycle of play to earn games. Everyone wants to take out money of your ecosystem, but there's no real incentive of putting money in unless you're speculating. So we felt like, okay, that's not going to be sustainable. So we don't want to kind of like bet on that, but we still wanted to bet on ownership, players, bringing players into the space. And so we ideated around that and pulled in some great kind of like obviously investors as VCs initially to support us, not just kind of like from a financial standpoint, but if you have the minds of Delphi, of Framework, QCP, and a lot of other, even just great founders that join us in the pre-seed period, it was just some incredible kind of like thought sharing there, and an incredible think tank that came around. And that's where we more and more then build out what Polemos was meant to be, which is basically at its core a blockchain gaming platform meant to bring in players from traditional gaming and guide them through the whole experience. So you can see it as something that is sitting next to the game developers and that doesn't cannibalize what they are doing. We're there to enhance the experience of game developers and gamers alike. So we're much more kind of like in sync with what the other people are doing in this space, because we're not trying to get a kind of like something for ourselves.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm glad that you said that. That was an observation I had made too. If everyone, when they go to play a Web3 game, trying to find the maximum way to extract value,
Mm-hmm.
like what's the longevity of not not very long. And so like some of the guilds and many of them have kind of pivoted now to kind of more like marketing firms. But yeah, that's really interesting to see that you guys were thinking about that 2 years ago.
I mean, if it's basic economies, like I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm the perfect game economist or even real economy or
You just
whatever.
said it. We have it
But
on podcast.
yeah. But even for me, as someone that is not an expert in that field, it was kind of like obvious. I mean, it's basic math. Like if someone drains your account, they can only do so for that long, unless new money comes in from somewhere else. And
Right.
if you think from a game developer's perspective, how can you generate money with your game? Well, there needs to be an incentive for players to spend money on your game. And it can't be the speculative type, because everyone that's speculating just gives you money because they want to take even more money out. So you
Right.
need to have the balance on the other side, which is the people, which hopefully is the majority, that are spending money on your game for entertainment purposes, for leisure time enhancement, whatever you want to call that. I mean, look at a game like Fortnite. It's a free-to-play game. People spend millions and millions and millions on skins and whatnot. They're not doing that for speculation. Like they're not gonna take 1,000 in and 5,000 out because they made a good investment. They're doing so because they want to get cool skins and whatnot to have an even better time while playing the game. And that's kind of like where a lot of the space have pivoted to by now. Like people focusing on the game first. There needs to be an incentive for people to actually spend money on your game. And then, of course, depending on how kind of like deep the NFT blockchain integration goes, there's room for people to kind of like possibly extract some value, possibly speculate on some investments. But it's certainly not going to be this idealistic, novel approach where people were hoping that everyone that starts playing, as long as they play very long, they can make a
Yeah.
full-time living. Like the money is just not there in order to pay for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's wild to think that there was a point in time where if you're in the Philippines or somewhere, you make more money local school teacher battling digital axolotls online.
Yeah.
Wild. Okay, so and I think we've kind of seen, like to your point, we've seen a lot of shifts from games moving to quality first, gaming first, and so now it's kind of becoming, how do you still gain users? Like, how do you retain those users? How do you keep them engaged? And
Mhm.
I guess, are there ways that Polemos kind of intersects with some of those goals from the game studios?
Yeah, it's kind of like if you look at Polemos, what it is about, it's basically we've built the platform with four pillars, like four core pillars in mind, and it's almost like a user funnel, the way that we set it up. So at the first stage, you have awareness. Like in order to bring a user anywhere, they need to be aware of it first. Like there's no way around that.
Sure.
So for the awareness part, we're kind of like focused on gaming content. So we have Pharos. It's what we labeled that segment of the protocol. It's based, like the naming is based on the ancient lighthouse of Alexandria. It's kind of like guiding people. So it's kind of like guiding people to where they might want to go. And throughout the Pharos part of Polymers, we're basically having key characters podcasts. So we're also interviewing people, which is being done by our head of content, Hal, in a very, very amazing quality, which obviously is based on him being a professional journalist for a long time. So yeah,
Shout out to Hal. You're doing great, man.
exactly. And then you kind of like have a key characters podcast. You have articles on the side. We're currently expanding our own presence on YouTube. So it's a lot of the stuff that you see in traditional gaming already, making people aware. The difference is here that while we're covering traditional games as well, we're also covering blockchain games and what happens in the blockchain space. So that's how you create the awareness. Now, when you have a player that is aware of it and that hasn't been kind of like put off by even mentioning of NFTs or blockchain or whatever potentially could scare them away, you have an interested player. They still need to be guided at that point. So you get to the onboarding stage, and from awareness to onboarding. For onboarding, we've built the Polemos University. It's a custom developed learning management system. You can think in the lines of, let's say, Udemy, for example, just that it's not only video content. So it's courses where you can take quizzes, where you can have written articles, where you can have video content like guides and tutorials, all that kind of stuff, where you can go a little bit more in depth and keep it in a structured format. And then you can have courses that build upon one another. Let's say, I don't know, Illuvium basics. And then from there, you can take maybe Illuvium PvP tutorial or whatever,
advanced guides or strategies. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All this kind of stuff. But in the end, it's basically courses about games, crypto basics, security online, that kind of stuff. So you're going through this funnel and you have the awareness. Now you have the onboarding. You have an onboarded player. Now that player, when onboarded, like any player usually, wants to have the best time they can have. Now, how do you get that? Usually through additional knowledge. On one side, they can get that from the university. On the other side, though, if you want to go deeper and maybe even play competitively a lot, you might want to look at analytics. You might want to look at additional tools. That's where our analytics come into play. So you have the awareness, the onboarding, then you have the improvement stage, or the analytics. Now, that one is the least developed at our end for now, just simply because a lot of the games that are very, very interesting are not out yet live. So you don't have the APIs you can kind of like tap into to get the data. The games are constantly shifting, even partially in large scale at the core gameplay level. So it doesn't really make sense to go hard on that front yet. We have some base kind of like proof of concepts on our platform live already, but all of that is kind of like more beta proof of concept type. We're going a little bit more deep on that. But you then again have awareness, onboarding, improvement. And if you have people this way, they are kind of like hooked.
They're already
playing.
in.
They are playing, they are improving, they are onboarded. But then you have kind of like this idea, obviously, which blockchain enables, is the part about asset ownership. owning your asset, getting NFTs, depending on how the game allows for that, obviously. And that's where the last part comes in, which is the armory on our end. And that's kind of like, from a development point of view, the very core of the whole platform. Basically, the armory is a non-collateralized game asset renting platform in of itself. So what does that mean? It means that you as a player, or even you as a game developer with dormant spare asset in your treasury, could go to the armory if your game is integrated, and you could stake those assets and make them available for rental by other players. And based on the demand on the other side and how many players actually utilize it to create some kind of return, obviously that's based on them paying rental fees, you get a share of that depending on how much of the collateral you put into that pool. So if you put a large amount into the pool, you get a large amount of the revenue that actually comes in via rentals being paid. Now, why is that interesting? It's basically interesting because we're at a time where a lot of game transactions are starting to shift. We've seen loot boxes for many years. They becoming more and more outlawed by a lot of people. Microtransactions had always had this kind of like weird thing, whatever you want to call that. Not a lot of people like it. And then you have the kind of like the idea about, okay, if players actually own the asset, let them make money with that. But you don't want to always sell the asset. Imagine you're playing a game, you have 3 amazing sets. You're really kind of like, you love those sets. You don't want to part ways with them, but you can only wear one. Why not rent the other 2 to players that don't have them just yet and that want to try it out before potentially buying something themselves? Because a rental is always cheaper than a purchase. I mean,
Yeah.
why should it be the other way around? I'm just owning it temporarily. Why would I pay more than owning it permanently, So it's a way for people to make money of dormant assets, and it's a way on the other side for people to test something out that might not be willing to commit to fully just yet.
Interesting. Okay, so you're making me kind of think back to my League of Legends days. I
Mhm.
played League for, I don't know, like a decade, and I have a bunch of skins that are highly sought after. But when
Yeah.
I'm in a game, I can only wear one, but I own 200 something.
Yeah.
So in this scenario, at no risk, right? I could stake them, and then other players can rent them, and I can earn passive income from those assets.
Exactly. That's the whole concept behind that. Obviously, it always depends on what NFTs are made available by the game. I mean, a game that doesn't have any blockchain integration, that's obviously not going to work because it kind of like lacks the fundamental part of blockchain integration.
Sure.
So we
Right.
couldn't just tab into World of Warcraft now, let's say, and make rental available for World of Warcraft. It's not on chain. That's kind of like the minimum baseline that needs to be there from a technical point of view. But aside from that, the platform is chain and game agnostic. Now, we have it live as a proof of concept for first game right now and kind of like as a beta test. That's on Polygon. And we're going to expand from there. But essentially, it's chain and game agnostic. So where we decide that we're going to kind of like integrate a new chain or a new game, we can do so as long as the assets are on chain and available, of course. And we will, over time, even throughout this year still, we will expand to additional games, chain, etc.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit. So
Sure.
if I'm a game studio and I earn royalty or sales from you buying assets from my store direct, but now you can rent them at kind of a fraction of the cost where there may not be a revenue share agreement in place. Isn't that kind of a bit of a challenge for studios?
It really depends if what you make available. Now, a lot of the games currently obviously are going in the direction of, let's say, free to play, and then you
Yeah.
earn assets in game. I'm not sure if games actually will be able to get enough revenue through secondary market trading only.
Right. Right.
It really depends. Maybe some games pull that off. I don't want to kind of like speculate on that. I think it's possible, but I'm not sure how likely it is to make it happen. But like a lot, if you don't build a renting mechanic yourself, then you also don't get the opportunity of players trying out playing with your assets for low amounts of money. If you're only selling stuff. Now, if you have free to play, they can just go in. And if you don't rent assets yourself already, then you're not missing out on any revenue streams there either. Of course, if you're selling and that's the only thing you do, there might be some cannibalization there. But I do think that very often it's offset by actually more people being willing to possibly try it out and then start spending even more on your game because they kind of like didn't have to commit with that much to begin with.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense, actually, the more I think about it, because um it's almost like if I was a musician and I released my music on YouTube, but now you can also discover it on Spotify or Napster or whatever. Like, the more places that my brand is represented, the more likely people are going to enter into the experience I built, and there's more people who spend money eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You also have this potential retention boost, and I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but you have the potential of a retention boost for some of your most hardcore players as well. Because if I, for example, again, if I play World of Warcraft right now and I play hardcore, I have some great assets, like some crazy items that I would never sell. Like, this means then they just sit there. Like, I can only wield, well, unless I play dual wield, of course, but let's say main hand, I can only wield one weapon.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting there with kind of like iconic stuff that I would never ever sell, even if I could. I would never sell these assets, even if they would be NFTs on chain. But now imagine I could rent them out. I still own them. They are sitting there idle, not doing anything for me. But now I can make money renting them out to other people. That's going to keep me hooked to get even more cool assets that I might still not be willing to sell because I'm expanding my portfolio of assets that could be rented out. And the other way around is also, as a game developer, a lot of games, at least from what we've seen to some degree, they sit on idle assets in their treasury. They are waiting to give them out for testing to people or hand them out over time or give them as rewards. Now, you could take those assets and make them available for renting yourself and create a new revenue stream. You could just stake them yourself on the platform, and suddenly you are the one that actually gets a significant amount of the rental fees created. And there's no real risk, at least not from an asset perspective. It, of course, needs to fit into your overall game's economy. Like, if you add additional assets to the circulation, it hopefully fits into what you're trying to do with the game overall.
Got it. Okay, so that's really exciting too then, because a lot of the game studios that I kind of follow and talk to are in that bootstrap, pre-seed, seed round, and it is a tough market to raise. So like a lot of them have went game first. They've developed like prototypes or betas, but in their VC conversations now it's like, great, what metrics have, because it's more back to fundamentals, and your platform sounds like it has the potential to really support both user acquisition as well as retention. Is awesome. That's really cool.
That's at least that's basically the foundation of the whole thing. Yeah. So it's to, like, our goal is to onboard as many gamers as possible into the space and give them the education and the access to assets to actually stay and have a great time.
Got it. Okay, so if someone's they've never rented an NFT before, and there's a gamer who's listening, so what does that process look like to, like, find the game that you guys currently support, pick up an asset, jump in and start playing?
So we do have, if you go on polemos.io, we do have basically the Forge, which is we're calling the technical part of the whole platform that we're developing. And right now you can log in, you can kind of like connect with a wallet, and then you get a Polemos wallet where rented assets are held. That's kind of like the technical foundation. You need to be able to protect the assets. If anyone could take the asset into their own MetaMask that they control, of course, there's no way of protecting that anymore.
Yeah,
that would be bad. Yeah. So this is kind of like what happens. You claim your Polemos wallet if you want to rent some stuff. If you want to stake some stuff, you can kind of like stake it directly, and then you collect the funds you get on the other side. And we are going to kind of like make that more and more frictionless. So there are talks about potentially getting like email logins or stuff like that. So I don't want to commit to anything at this point here, because Richard, my co-CEO, who is taking the lead on the actual development, would probably be very angry with me if I promise anything that hasn't been 100%.
You heard it first here, folks.
But obviously, like our whole kind of like the whole goal with Polemos is to onboard as many gamers as possible. Like obviously, you want to make it as frictionless as possible for them to find games, get into the games, and get access to the assets they potentially want to use or have to use if a game kind of like is gated behind owning something. So right now, you would need a wallet already, but we do have free courses that teach you some stuff around crypto basics. They don't require necessarily to be logged in with a wallet just yet. So there's kind of like this education. That's where the university comes into play, that you're trying to educate people as much as possible and guide them through this slightly not frictionless process yet. But you see more and more stuff happening. I mean, the immutable passport that you're probably aware of as well. They're doing a lot of stuff to make it as kind of like as easily and seamless as possible to get into these games. And I do think 1-2 years from here, the times of painstakingly having to teach someone create their own MetaMask wallet to then log into a platform that requires you to do all kinds of signing processes, I think that's going to be gone. It's still going to be there, but a lot of the stuff is going to be more on the back end. And where it's needed later on, it's going to be shown to people that had some exposure to it already as they onboard. But it's not a requirement any longer for people that just came into the space and basically just want to get into the game and play.
Yeah. And I love that too, because it's also going to weed out all the garbage. It's hard to run a scam and build a good game at a good time, or at the same time. You can't do both.
It definitely is.
And it's really expensive.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it. Like, look at some of the funding some of those games already had, and there's more coming. Or just look at traditional gaming and the amount of money that goes into some of these games. I mean, it's crazy. Like, you can't do it. Like, I'm not saying you can't do a good game with little funding. I mean, there are incredible games being developed by indie developers, even solo developers. But obviously, the majority of kind of like high-profile games cost a lot of money, which means they have large teams, they have reputation to secure and protect. Not that all of them do that well. I mean, we all see all the bunch of scandals throughout the gaming industry over the last years and before, but that's like everywhere. Like, it's where there are humans, there are scandals at some point eventually. But in terms of money and the money that flows into the space, there are several high quality development teams in Web3 right now that are developing real games at a, let's say, AAA level. I don't like the label necessarily, but it's kind of like what people understand that, okay, this is a
different level
game. Yeah. The problem is that AAA, at least the way I see it and understand it, is it's kind of like more in terms of what went into making the game. It's more about the resources, the budget, etc. AAA doesn't necessarily mean good. That's where I feel like a lot of people sometimes are misled. A AAA game doesn't necessarily have to be good.
It just costs a lot of money to make.
Exactly. You would hope that it's good, and a lot of them luckily are.
Yeah.
but there certainly are AAA games in terms of visual fidelity and budget being spent on making it that just aren't good.
Okay, so I have a couple more questions, but on that note,
Sure.
are there any games that you want to shout out that you think are particularly uh and particularly in a good position to deliver on a quality gaming experience?
It really depends. Like, if obviously taking completely Web 2 out of the equation, traditional games, since we're talking to obviously a large degree about blockchain here as well. I actually very recently did kind of like a 14-day shout out to a variety of games on my Twitter. So
Mm,
there's a thread pinned there with 14 games, one game each day, and then I compiled it as a thread afterwards. Were games that I actually need to check how exactly I phrased it. I think I said, yeah, promising games in Web3 gaming. So I'm kind of like not saying these are the games that are going to be hits, because that's very hard to kind of like foresee for anyone. No one has a crystal ball.
nothing's
But from
guaranteed.
Exactly. But from what I've seen, and with a lot of the game development teams included in there, I had personal contact already, maybe even to some degree early playtest access that the public might not have seen yet, and that kind of stuff. And those 14 games are certainly a big part of why I'm very, very bullish yet still on the space,
Mm,
even from a gamer's perspective, because those are games to a large degree where I feel that gamers really get something valuable. And that's has always been what I think was missing early on. And I can only speak to kind of like 2 years and that around that time. I know that some developers have been there developing some kind of gamified versions of stuff even earlier than that. But 2 years ago, I felt like a lot of games were still too much focused on, well, the finance part of what they were doing, trying to capitalize on that. And from those 14 games, even though there's a lot of blockchain integration there to some degree, more or less, depending on which game you're looking at, those games feel promising as games first.
mm.
And then they come with some degree of blockchain integration, which just makes it a lot more exciting for me personally, because I do think, depending on how it's integrated, it can add a lot of value to gamers as well.
Heck yeah. Okay, so in the show notes of this podcast, I'll put the link to his thread so you guys can check out those 14. Give him some love.
Yeah, I mean, let me throw 3, 4 out now, and then for anyone not mentioned, forgive me about that. Doesn't mean that it's a ranking here. Shoutbound is certainly one that I'm thinking highly of. They just have their playtest right now. People are streaming it. But that is also, to some degree, I'm biased there. It was taking on from a prior developer, and it's actually a game that was initially kickstarted in 2017, which I participated in. So
Mm,
I have a kind of like fond memories, and was very sad that it never made it to full release. So hoping best, of course, to
happy ending
now.
story. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you have stuff like Legions and Legends from Azure Games. If you know Mark Otero as is kind of like the founder and CEO, he's one of the key people behind EA's Star Wars mobile hit that has grossed, I think, over $1 billion by now. So the type of game they are doing with this RPG kind of like approach is obviously something that him and his team are very experienced in. And
Mm,
then I'll tell you, they are really showing with their free NFT collection, the hopefuls, which is kind of like play forever passes, that they understand this is gamers community first, game first, and then you can take a lot of the blockchain value afterwards. Cloud Castle falls into a similar avenue. Amazing background in the team overall. JVC, who is kind of like co-founder and co-CEO, he's kind of like literally in the gaming, I think, Game Developers Hall of Fame. He was
wow.
behind founding Triern, which was behind Rift, the MMO that was very popular for quite a while. Was responsible for the Command and Conquer franchise at EA. Actually, the creator of Heroes Might and Magic, the kind of like
Yeah.
that game series. So there's amazing talent. Shrapnel as well, the team behind Shrapnel, Neon, amazing talent there. And I could go on. Like a lot of the teams that I've like games I've listed in those 14 games have teams behind themselves that have incredible experience from traditional game development, and then are embracing what Web3 can bring or blockchain technology can bring on top. And that's where I think the sweet spot is. Not the crypto expert that are dabbling in game development, but the highly experienced game development teams coming in and embracing blockchain technology as well.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing like a maturation of who's building in the space.
Yes.
And that, bear markets are painful, but it forces people to innovate and grow and refine. And I think that's one of the benefits of this one is that can't bullshit in this market.
No.
It's real teams building real stuff.
I mean, exactly. You could look at another game like Wildcard. I mean, the team is behind Words with Friends. That's
Yep.
like,
I played that.
Obviously, different type of game, but there's a lot of credibility there, and that's also the only reason how they were able to raise kind of like 46 million, if I remember entirely correctly, in 2022 for that game division for Wildcard. You don't get that kind of money unless you have something to show, or you're super early in some kind of highly speculative hype cycle.
Yeah.
Which AI, for example, certainly had. I'm not sure if they're still there yet. I'm not that close, at least not from a builder's perspective, certainly from a user perspective. But obviously, then people are kind of like, they just want to get in early and throw money at you. But from Wildcard, for example, another game that has been in development for quite a while that is showing really high promises. But again, very experienced team behind it as well.
Okay. So let's circle this back to the Polemos. So,
yes,
is your focus now on getting players in, or is it on finding game studios, publishers, partner with, or is it both?
It's actually both. So for us, now that we have a proof of concept for the whole platform, it's obviously about establishing relationships with game developers and kind of like understand how we can work together, go into collaborations, partnerships, build out our kind of like our service pipeline, all that kind of stuff. But it's also on the audience growth, because if there's one thing we probably all can agree on in the space is there's a lack of gamers. It's probably less than what we see right now. So when I'm talking about lack of gamers, obviously you have to differentiate between gamers and active gamers, because there are a lot more gamers in this space, but not all of them are active because they don't feel there's anything worthwhile for them to play.
Right.
But even if you would take everyone that is kind of like in this space already and that is still positive about it and that would play games, it would still be a tiny fraction of the global gamer population.
Right.
So what we're trying to do now is obviously also to grow an audience and to expand on that. That's why we're pushing a lot on stuff on our YouTube channel now, which is growing nicely with the great work of our content team. And so that it's basically both. Because we think now is the time. Games are slowly getting ready to come out. Some great games to possibly come out this year still, and 24 certainly will see 10 plus great games come out from my estimation based on what I'm seeing, and it could be way more because I'm only seeing that much. I don't know how many great games are being built in stealth right now or just went past my radar. So I do think right now is an amazing time to kind of like start communicating with game developers, see how you can collaborate through the kind of like kind of like in development stage, into release, going forward from there together, grow together, because there's almost none in the space right now that can say they don't have to grow anymore. Like there's no one that has a large gaming audience that they can tap into. We're all at the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. So if there's a game studio who's interested, they want to learn more, where's the best place for them to reach out to?
We do have a partnership form on our website. That's one thing. Otherwise, our Discord is always an option. Also easily reachable via polemos.io. There's a Discord invite link on the page. There's an Ask Us Anything channel. Could make a note there. Usually that's where our mods and community managers then also share the partnership form. But it's also where sometimes I personally kind of like just notice it and reach out myself directly. But the
Nice.
easiest way is certainly through the page, and then either on Discord or through the form directly.
Boom. There you go, folks. I'll put that link in the show notes as well to make travels a little bit easier. Okay. Well, cool. So I guess looking at the next 3 to 6 months, like what are you most excited to see within Polemos?
It's probably expanding on what we have. I mean, we've built for almost 2 years now, and the armory in particular, the renting part, which is live as a proof of concept for the first game now as well for a while. That took incredible amount of resources, time. There was a lot of technical hassle that needed to be solved. The right partners to be found. Richard and obviously the rest on the technical side, including our third party partners, they did an amazing job solving that. So we're obviously incredibly proud to see this live and in action. And so looking forward from a Polemos standpoint, it's literally expanding on that, getting the tools that we have built now live on larger games, on games with larger audiences, to really see it in action, not just kind of like as a technical proof of concept, but as something that is alive and thriving. That's something I'm really, really looking forward to, and it's obviously going to happen throughout expanding to additional games and chains, and also through kind of like just growing our own audience, because then we can help onboard those players into cool games that are coming out. So from a Polemos standpoint, it's really kind of like seeing what we've built actually being used, and on the other side, helping to grow the space as a whole by just getting more players' attention of the cool games that are actually being built with blockchain technology.
Man, I think I might have to hop in and try the platform out.
Sure, do so. I mean, again, Polemos.io, they're all links easily available there. And then you can take it from there. For now, still need a wallet, of course, to log in. There's some stuff that you can access for free in the university. But yeah, as soon as you're on Polemos.io, you have the links at the top: university, armory, news, all that kind of stuff. So pretty easy to get everywhere from there, including taking a look at some of our latest news and key character interviews, etc.
Yeah, you know what? So if you guys haven't followed Polemos, shout out to their content team. So over the last, gosh, man, I don't know, year plus, I've consistently seen brand new YouTube videos, AMAs, some of the best threads on your website that I've like shared on my Twitter feed. Uh, so yeah, you guys should check them out if you're not already. Good stuff.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. So last couple things I always like to wrap up these podcasts with. Is your team hiring or is your team raising? In case there's anyone out there who wants to get in touch on any of those things.
Hiring, we're currently not, at least not at scale. There might be the odd position here and there every now and then, but I wouldn't kind of like put a flag up right now saying we're hiring. Raising, always happy if someone wants to reach out, please do so. Just shoot me a message directly at sascha@polemos.io, or reach out through the form or anything else where I'll be able to pick it up. We're always happy to talk to people there, and see if there's something that makes sense for both sides, given where we're at in possible fundraising rounds or whatever.
Perfect. Okay. And then, so when you sit down and you try and like get some insight into the future of Web3 gaming, are there specific Twitter feeds, article writers, YouTube channels, podcasts that you listen to that you think are particularly good that you don't mind sharing with us?
I think a lot of the stuff you can get is from Twitter. I mean, we have to obviously just see what everything that is happening, if that stays kind of like the go-to spot for Web3 gaming news, giving everything that is happening with Threads and Elon and
Yeah.
Zuckerberg, etc. But for now, I do think there's some great people on Twitter that constantly share a lot of great stuff. I have to say that many of them are actually part of Wolves DAO. So definitely a shout out to the Wolves out there. They have some great people there that really add value, and not just kind of like shit post for the sake of being entertaining. Not that there's anything wrong with that. If that's kind of like what you're going for, please continue to everything, like everyone their own. I'm not saying it's bad in any sense, but in terms of like more thought through value, if some people want to follow up or don't miss out on important stuff that is happening, a lot of the Wolves DAO members are very active on that front, and also have a kind of like high capacity of providing good content and good news. So that definitely something I would say check out those members. I personally I do like to take a look at VentureBeat every now and then, the game section. They actually cover both traditional gaming and blockchain very often. So if you go to kind of like venturebeat.com and then it's category games, they tackle blockchain gaming news as well. So even fundraising stuff. I remember Wildcard was on it with their fundraising last year, and I've seen other blockchain related articles too. So it's kind of like I like this one because it keeps the bridge between traditional gaming and blockchain gaming. So you're not committing to kind of like one isolated space.
Yeah, one little
Because for me,
pocket.
exactly. For me
Yeah.
personally, it's essentially blockchain is just another technology for gaming, just like AI, just like VR, AR, different platforms like console, PC, or whatever. I think it's just mobile. It's just one technology that eventually will become a technology in gaming rather than a separate space.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that. Like it'll be interesting though, I think in the near term, especially with like the news around Google Play. Because there is a large crypto curious audience, many of who left kind of during this bear market. But it'll be interesting to see how studios and games and projects message what they're building to those Web2 audiences who have heard maybe of Bitcoin. That's like as far as it's went. Um, but I guess to your point, maybe they won't, and they'll more lean into the gaming experiences. Kick ass, just come play it with us.
Yeah, could be.
Okay, and then last question for you. So man, you've built a startup. You've been through part of the bull market, part of the bear market. Any words of wisdom for folks out there who are trying to build better, faster, smarter? Any words of advice?
Yeah, first of all, I'd say make sure you have a great network, great partners, because when you say you build a startup, I'm hearing in my mind, I was lucky enough to be able to help build their startup, because there's no way I could have done it alone. I was standing on great shoulders and great people supporting with a lot of wisdom and expertise, and money, of course, as well. It's kind of like something that you need when you're building something. I have a great and very experienced co-CEO at my side for quite a while now. So I think one important thing is don't neglect networking. Make sure that you have a great team, but also great people that you can reach out to if you need any other expertise that your team might not have just yet. That's incredibly important. I think that's not just in this space, in any space you're building. And then, of course, given that we're in a bear market for quite a while now, and we've obviously seen some large crypto scandals and layoffs everywhere and all that kind of stuff, I think it's quite important to make sure you survive. Sometimes you gotta make some hard choices or hard decisions. But if that's what you have to do to survive, to get through it to the other side, you just gotta do that. If you believe that what you have is something that actually could thrive and grow when things pick up again, then you need to make sure you get to that point, because if you don't, you'll never see it happen. You never even see if there was a chance to thrive, because you were gone before it even happened. So I think like really being able to take the hard decisions, as difficult as it is sometimes in business, that's important, and to make sure that you have an incredible team and just overall network. I think that's probably two of the most valuable suggestions or advice I can give based on the last 2 years though in it, building in the space.
There you go, folks. Words of wisdom. Yeah, those really resonate. Have you ever seen that chart for startups? It's like, I have a brand new idea. It's going to be great. Nobody likes it. Somebody likes it. We got 2 people. Oh, they left because it was terrible. Like, just a roller coaster. Just survive. Just keep going. Just keep going. You'll figure it out.
I mean, I just read, just my last nugget there. I just read something about Mr. Beast, which obviously probably everyone knows by now, or at least has heard of as is the biggest YouTuber ever. I think he uploaded for 2 years and was like at almost no subscribers or whatever. So imagine he'd stopped before things started kind of like picking up. The whole space of YouTube and content creation would be vastly different if his input and kind of like his development and all the stuff that he's been doing wouldn't have been there. Whether that's bad or worse or whatever, better or worse, sorry, I'll leave that to everyone else for themselves to judge. But it would be different. And the only reason it didn't happen is because he kind of like followed through until stuff happened, because he was obviously convinced that you just need to get better and kind of like survive long enough.
That's it, man. Just keep going. 1 foot in front of the next.
Exactly.
All right. Sascha, this is great, man. I'm glad to see you're doing well. I'm glad to see that your team's doing well. And yeah, we should set up another one of these. Maybe I won't hold you off for a year. We'll do it in like 6 months or something like that.
Happy so. By then we should have some great games out. So obviously we can talk about a lot more live games then as well.
Heck yeah, dude. We'll even play some. Let's go. Why not?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, everyone. That's the podcast. Thanks for listening. Y'all have a great day. Peace.